All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Integrity Racing Show. Have a lot to go through tonight. I'm running it solo again a little bit. Luckily, I do have two guests with us tonight. Both of them who are able to, I'll kind of spoil it, both of them who are able to make it to the next round in different ways. We have James Hudson, who's here with us tonight, and Nick Tarabuck. So both of them have been kind enough to join me, and we'll go over the Cup Series stuff. I have, courtesy of Adam, we have a nice little spreadsheet, or excuse me, not a spreadsheet, a slideshow presentation that we'll kind of go through and give you all the news and notes for the Cup side, and then we'll hit the Truck Series, which just wrapped up here a few minutes ago, which was some fun racing, even though we had a smaller field tonight. And we'll kind of go over that and give you a look ahead to what's to come for what should be the contender round, and should be some great racing coming up. So let's kind of go ahead and jump right into it, and I'll go ahead and get started basically with which should be, I'm on the wrong slide, which should be basically the Challenger round recap. So what we'll do is we'll look back at Chicagoland first and kind of go over the results and stuff from there. And let me pull that up for you. There we go. So basically, with Chicagoland, Caleb Eisenhower was the winner there. And you kind of get an idea on the right-hand side, the results from the chase drivers. Obviously, with Caleb's win, he was able to secure his spot for this round. And then you can see the four guys in red there were the ones who missed the cut for the first round. And so, guys, kind of gives you a synopsis of where everybody stacked up. And you'll kind of get that as we go through the next couple slides. Nick, James, why don't you chime in real quick about how your races went at Chicago and how you got your chase started.
All right. So my chase race at Chicago didn't last much longer than about half the race, I don't think. Maybe not even. I think I got caught up in one of the wrecks that was going into turn 1 or 2 or something like that. And that I think I was able to come back out, and I was off the pace. And then I got caught up in another wreck, which ended my night that night. So it put me off on a pretty tough spot for the first race in the chase kind of thing.
Yeah, I was definitely in a similar boat with you there, and just I got caught up in a wreck in turn 1 and set me back and made it definitely a challenge. I think we're both in the same boat for most of the chase, trying to play catch up, and then hopefully was just making making enough time to catch up, and luckily we both did at Dover, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, Hudson, how did your Chicago race go? And kind of tell us, what you remember about it and how it sets you up for the first round of the for the chase here.
Oh my gosh. Okay. There we are. I had to remember actually. I think I had a pretty rough time there actually. That was another one of those tracks I'm really not too good at. Looks like I finished at 13th. So I kind of just went with the strategy for the first round that I was going to from the beginning was just kind of try to coast through all three of these tracks I'm not good at. So I just stuck to the plan and went with it. Luckily, it ended up working out.
All right, and what we'll do here is I'll show the chase grid after Chicago. So just we'll kind of give you a quick preview of after each race and see how the points change there. And as I share that, basically, Alan Pajori, myself, Cody Smith, and Nick were the ones on the bottom 4, and then Todd Thomas was the one on the cut line there. And I think really the first race seemed really important to get out of the gates with a good start. Otherwise, it made it really difficult to get back there. I think for the most part, the guys who are on the right-hand side of this chart were the ones that stayed on the right-hand side of the chart for the next 2 races. So what we'll do is go ahead and move on to New Hampshire, which was pretty much a dominating run by Matt Busa, who was able to come in and lead pretty much all the laps, if I'm not mistaken, except for a couple. But you see there, you know, Cody Smith had a really good run in fourth, was the second highest chase finisher there. So that really put him back in contention, and I believe put him on the right side of things at this point in time. But you see the couple guys towards the bottom again, really having troubles. I know Joshua Campbell had connection issues both here and last night at Dover, which we'll get into here in a second. But you really had to finish up high each race in order to transfer on. And I think that's really a demonstration of what it's going to take to do well and to move on each round. So it looks like here, Nick, you were able to finish ninth. We had a great battle there at the end at New Hampshire, battling for position. And Hudson, looks like you finished 13th. Why don't you tell us how your New Hampshire race was, and kind of let us know where your confidence level was of moving on to the next round after New Hampshire.
Awful. That would be how I would describe it. And another one of those tracks, like I said earlier, all three of these tracks, especially New Hampshire. New Hampshire is probably my worst track on the circuit. I'm just not good at flat, as it showed tonight and at New Hampshire. So, like I said, I just kind of stuck to my plan and tried to get the best finish I could and kind of bank on other people having issues. And luckily, enough of them did. I think I don't remember what the points were per se. I think I had about a 13 or 14 point to the good. So I knew going into Dover, as long as I finished, top 15 or so, I could transfer. So my confidence was up a little bit just because of other people's unfortunate circumstances.
Great segue, Hudson. What we're going to look at next is basically what the points were after New Hampshire, which changed a little bit. Like I mentioned, Cody was able to move above the cut line, and Campbell came back to myself, Nick, and Alan after New Hampshire. So we still had a little bit of work to do. Nick, obviously, like I said, you and I are in the same boat. Leaving New Hampshire, did you feel you had any chance of moving to the next round? Obviously, I'm kind of foreshadowing a little bit here, but how did you think, or what did you think you would have to do going into Dover to make it a successful advancement?
Well, I knew that after the first race, Kentucky or in Chicagoland, that one. That's why I was battling so hard in New Hampshire for ninth, because I'm like, I need every spot I can get so I can make the cut. And then going into Dover, Dover's been one of my favorite tracks, obviously because it's my home track, sort of. And it's the track I go to race at all the time. So I'm like, if I have a chance to make it in off of any track, it's going to be at Dover. And I knew that I had to just keep it clean, which is something that I had to have an issue with sometimes. But I figured if I keep it clean and just play strategy right, then I could give it a shot. And foreshadowing is correct. Luckily, I was able to do that.
Yeah, you were, which we'll kind of get into here in a second. Hopefully, sadly, I haven't actually looked ahead at Adam's Adam's spreadsheet. I've been a little busy tonight, but we'll look at here at Dover, and which we just wrapped up with last night. I'll go ahead and share that up there now. Caleb was able to get the win once again. As we mentioned, Nick had great strategy there at the end of the race to come home second. I was able to get fourth, which was necessary for me to move on as I had some work to do. And then Hudson, we had another quality run there in 11th. I want to kind of get a little bit more in depth with the Dover race, since that's the last race we had for the Cup Series. Going into it, like I said, for me personally, it was basically doing a lot of math the whole time and trying to keep updated with where everyone was. I know, unfortunately, Campbell had some more connection issues last night and wasn't able to return. So I knew that was one guy that I'd kind of hopped over. And it really was, I thought for a while there, going to be how many positions do I need to stay ahead of Cody? And then conversely, how many positions can I keep between me and Nick? Because I thought if you got too far ahead of me, you would be the one to jump me, and that would present a problem, at least for me anyway. So unfortunately, once again for Jay, he didn't have a great finish. He wasn't quite as clean as he usually is. Got into a little accident there. I want to say around the 50 lap mark or so, and that kind of hindered his progress for the night. Because usually, if he can stay out of trouble, he can manage to get into the top 12, 15 area, and anywhere in there really would force me to kind of push and move up further in the standings than probably I'd represented for most of the night. Quite frankly, the fourth place finish I had was higher than where I'd been most of the night. So luckily, I had a couple breaks, but as far as, like I said, as far as Dover goes, Nick, you had quite the race. I think you had a really good long run car. Why don't you tell us how your race kind of transpired from beginning to end, and what put you in position to move on to the next round?
Yeah, so first run we had, my car, well, me, was I wasn't very good in the short run because I just didn't know how to get the what line to run going into the turns. So it seemed like I'd really burn my tires off, or I wouldn't scrub enough speed off at the beginning of the turn, and I'd be super slow coming off. And I fell back to like 15th or so, I think. And about, after the second or third caution, I started to keep up with people in like 9th, 10th around there. I was like, all right, I'm getting the hang of this. And I did like the long run. Every time there was a caution, I was kind of angry because I'm like, yeah, the long run's coming up. I'm starting to catch up to people. I can pass them for some positions. But there's a few times, actually, one time at the end, near the end, with about 40, 50 to go, I got into the back of somebody who was coming off the wall at a turn 4, and it messed up my radiator, my air, and I was getting to like 285 oil temperature. And for a minute there, I was like, well, there goes my entire chase run. There goes that. It's going to blow up on the front straightaway somewhere. But luckily, we got that last caution, and Neil's like, Nick, with the way this thing's going, man, it's 10 to go at the line. You might as well just take 2 tires and try to keep position, because people are going to wreck. And I was on the fence. I'm like, we'll see. I could take 4 tires and be fast. I could take 2 tires and maybe get lucky with cautions. And up until I got in my pit box, I had 4 tires checked. And I finally take off the left side tires, and I was like, all right, Neil, it's this strategy works, man. I owe you one. And sure enough, we go out and they wreck twice, I guess, like on the first, second turn. Booster got spun, and then that put me in the second, luckily, because they were in front of me. And then I'm like, well, all I got to do is keep this restart clean and hold on to second or third and see what happens. And yeah, as soon as they were into turn 1 after the restart lap, Neil's like, they're wrecking. And I was neck and neck with Fayash, like we were nose to nose. And as soon as he said they're wrecking, I just gunned it going into turn 1. I'm like, I hope this thing sticks, hope I don't slam into the wall. And luckily, I was able to get the nose on Fayash before the caution, or as the caution was thrown, and I got second place. And I think if it weren't for that whole strategy of taking 2 tires, and then Neil helped me out saying they're wrecking, and I gunned it. If it weren't for any of that, I'd probably be outside the cut right now. So it was just really, really intense those last couple laps, definitely.
Yeah, Hudson, out of the 3 of us here, you were definitely the most consistent. Did you, obviously going through the race, there's different things that happen. I know we're on the same channel on Discord, so we were talking about different things and trying to keep up with stuff. Did you feel worried at all that you were getting close to that cut line, or was just mainly focused on staying the course, keeping clean, and just kind of managing the best result just to see what the best result could be?
Yeah, that was kind of my plan, was just kind of chill out, hang out. I think I qualified pretty decent. Looks like, hell, I can't remember, 5th, something like that. Qualified pretty good, so I had a little bit more confidence going in, but it showed quickly that, for one, you can't full throttle on the restarts, and 2, that I had a very short run car like normal at Dover. I ended up hanging around 10th, 11th, 12th, somewhere around there, pretty much the whole race. I just kind of figured if I hung out right there, I was green, and I think enough people that were behind me in the points were kind of doing the same thing. I know Nick was with me for most of the race, and like he was saying, those long runs started happening towards the end, and he took off like a rocket. I know he was working his way up 8th, 7th, 6th, somewhere around where you were running. But no, confidence-wise on making it through, I stayed pretty high the whole time. I felt like I had enough gap in between everybody to hold my position. I did end up wrecking on a long run. I know I had some brake issues there for a while too. But that last restart, I think, granted me like 7 or 8 positions. So finally, a little luck falls my way. That really helped out, and we moved on.
Yeah, the one thing I do want to cover before we move on, the last 2 restarts really, I think, was the most intense part of the race, as you had Cody Smith made a play to stay out on older tires. I want to say at that point we had been out on at least 30 to 40 lap tires, somewhere in that general vicinity. When he made that move, what were your, and either one of you could answer, what were your thoughts about that, and what were you kind of preparing to do, or what was your thought process as far as those last couple cautions and beyond just survival, but you know, kind of take us through your thoughts. As that really not only is it a racing thing, but it changes all the chase positions and the way you have to think about um, how you run. So kind of walk, either one of you kind of walk us through that.
I know for me personally, I know. I believe it was after I found that Cody was staying out. I think it was the next caution. I'd highly considered coming in and dropping towards the back, if I remember right. I think that's the right caution. Just to avoid a big junk. I know that those tires were really, really slick, and he showed it because he dropped like a fly, or dropped like a rock, whatever the hell the expression is. And I was just worried that, like you said, it was very tense. You could almost feel it, how tense everybody was. And I just knew there was going to be a big junk and it was going to take out a lot of people. Like you said, me and you were on the same channel, and I think I talked about it all the way till I passed the cone and just decided to gamble on it. And I think you called it right. The word survival was the one that was hitting me. So it definitely made me a little nervous and drive a little more on the cautious side, because that's all I know I needed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely can agree with that. I think the main thing I was thinking of is I thought I was in a decent position at that point. So it's the unknown, I guess, to a certain extent. And if with a place like Dover, it's very hard to get out of the way. Not in Cody's sense, but if something happens, it's hard to have any wreck avoidance or get around stuff if the track gets clogged in a situation like that. So I don't necessarily blame him for making the move, but it does add that, like I said, that extra layer of intensity. I know I was feeling it, knowing that was one of the last things that could prevent me from moving to the next round. And obviously, with a move like that, there are some benefactors in this case, Nick being one of them, with his 2-tire call, and then that happening. I think, yeah, you were on the outside line, Nick, in front of me, and that kind of helped you get to that second position as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, my car had always been, or me, have always been favoring the outside line ever since I learned early in the race to use the outside line entering. I loved that a lot, and I was like, yeah, I cannot survive on no tires, because I've seen people burn the tires on the restarts or just lose all the grip after the first turn. So I knew that I had to kind of gamble a little bit with the 2-tire call, and it just ended up being, I got lucky twice, got 2 tires, I got my damage repaired enough so I didn't overheat, and I got on the outside lane. So it all just kind of added up, and it made it to where I could kind of feel comfortable about it. I just had to make sure I didn't screw anybody else up or myself in the process, because that would have been, not only would I have been mad, but everybody else been like, oh man, Nick wrecked half the field because he didn't take 4 tires. So it was very very nerve-wracking, but definitely a very fun end of the race there. Definitely made a lot of definitely made it very dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. And I did really like to see, on a slightly separate note from the chase stuff, how wide you could get on the track. I think there were guys running all the way up to the wall, and I knew I tried to go up there a couple times, but I felt most comfortable at the bottom. So it's definitely interesting to see that difference of lanes and how certain people can make it work and other people not so much. But let's move on and kind of focus ahead a little bit. I'll give you a preview of the chase grid there as it pops up on your screen as we head into the what is the contender round. Hopefully it's big enough for you guys to see it. If not, I'll go over the names for you. As we head into Charlotte, Talladega, and Kansas, basically you have Caleb Eisenhower, Guillermo Alvarez, Eric and Adam de Blasio, William Dunn, James Hudson, Todd Thomas, Lance Jennings, Greg Trago, myself, Michael Duell, and Nick Tarabook are the drivers who made it on to the next round. Like I said, those next 3 races are, for the most part, cookie cutter tracks, except for Talladega, which is just a crapshoot. I think everybody can agree to that. But basically, what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and preview those next 3 races. These next 3 races, if I'm not mistaken, I might be off by 1, are going to be all sponsored races. Lance Jennings is nice enough to sponsor these 3 races for the Extra Life, which we kind of talked about when he was here in our last round table, as far as it's basically a 24-hour marathon gaming, charity through online gaming. That's the right way to explain it. And like I said, we'll have Lance on here hopefully next week to kind of talk more in depth about that. And just be sure to check out the website for Extra Life and his work that he'll be doing to raise money for different children's hospitals and things like that around his area, which happens to be North Dakota. And hopefully you all, and myself included, I plan to donate. We'll get behind that and support him as we go up to that. And like I said, we'll talk about it here next week, hopefully. But with that being said, we'll move on into Charlotte, which will be the first race in the next 3 race segment. Brad Patton was the winner, I believe, earlier this year, is the stats that Adam used here. And on the right-hand side, once again, I'll give you an idea of where everyone finished up earlier this year at Charlotte. As you see, we were somewhat grouped together around mid-pack and further back, sadly. But Nick, why don't we start with you? What are your thoughts on Charlotte? We'll be running the night race there Monday night. What do you think of your chances going into Charlotte and this round in general?
So Charlotte, see, I don't remember how far back. 28th. I feel like I probably got into a situation, a wreck or something like that, because I like Charlotte, and it's one of the tracks I'm actually not that bad at, like, cookie cutter kind of tracks. Just keeping it clean is one of those things. So I'll be focusing on doing that. I'm going to try and practice some more this week, more than an hour before the actual race. I'm going to try to get in and do some laps, I guess, tomorrow night or Sunday night when I get back from some other car thing. And it's going to be, the name of the game is going to be keeping it clean, because I can't get to, the next round if I don't have a car at the end of the race. So I'll try and do a lot better than 28th, and I'll try to keep it clean, and then we'll see how it goes from there for Charlotte, at least.
Yeah, Hudson, obviously going to Charlotte, what do you think you have to do in order to kind of put a good foot forward for the next round here? Where do you think you have to be position-wise?
I think Nick called it. I think it's, if I remember right, it was a pretty aggressive race last time. I'm looking at the results. I was 16th in the last car in the lead lap. Not one of my best tracks, so it's another one of those ones I plan on just kind of surviving. I know the field's going to be a lot smaller this time. I think we should be in the 20s again, if I remember right, or if I'm thinking right. I think you almost have to get a good foot and step into the top 10 to really set your round off right, especially going into Dega after the next race. You never know what's going to happen there, and this year, plate tracks haven't been that nice to me, or either I'm not racing in them. So hopefully I can bring home a top 10 next week and kind of give myself a little cushion for the big track.
If I didn't know any better, that might have been a little dig to something earlier this year, but that's okay. So yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think he's jealous because we won the race. But yeah, I mean, Charlotte's going to definitely be a good race for somebody, more than likely Caleb, to be able to have a good start. And like you said, a top 10, I think, will almost be necessary to do that. I know my problem usually at most tracks is having the car not get so tight that it just burns the right front off. I can't manage to save tires very well and keep up. So that'll be a challenge for me personally, but hopefully we'll be able to do better than I did at the start of Chicago and not run into the same issues that I had to play catch up for most of this first round. So let's go ahead and talk about everyone's favorite race, which will be the crapshoot known as Talladega. It's literally that, a crapshoot, as we pull it up here. Guillermo was able to get the win last time we went here, and if I remember correctly, this would be the Todd Thomas FU Brad Patton race that has become famous or infamous, depending on who you are. So if the first race, without any chase implications, was representative of anything, this will definitely be an intense race and a hard-fought race for the win, or any position for that matter. I know going into these types of races, it's all about teams and getting set up with the right people to try to make maneuvers towards the front, just to have any attempt at a position. Either one of you can answer this. Who do you think has not necessarily even out of the chase group, but who do you think has a chance to run well here? Or who do you look for in these plate races to kind of, show up at the front?
Everybody.
That's an easy answer.
I mean, that's just it. It's luck. It's even teammates don't even matter anymore at these tracks. It's really all about luck and being at the right place at the right time and hitting your pit stop correctly. I know usually we get a green flag run in somewhere in the middle that ends up making us all pit, and it throws everything out of whack, and that's usually where the separation begins. And I think I wouldn't know because I wasn't there. That's how y'all won at Daytona. But
he's not salty at all, folks.
No. I mean, no offense to Alan, but you saw it in the truck race. Alan had a damn good shot to win the truck race. I mean, we had a little over 30 cars, I think, in the truck race last week, I believe. And within the first half of the race, I think there was 6 left fighting for the win. So it's these plate tracks. It's just like you said. It's a crapshoot. It's been right place and right time. The iRacing has really done a shitty ass job with getting the plate tracks right and making them worth driving.
Yeah, Nick, you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah. So I think that it's going to be really fun because you're going to have, first off, a lot of people show up. I think this is plate racing, and then 2, you're going to have anybody like Hudson. So you're going to have anybody. Just get lucky, you end up in the top 5 the entire race. You never know. But one thing that Neil and I did wrong during Daytona, which when you and I forget who was behind you were in the lead, and Neil and I were like 3rd and 4th. We decided within 2 laps to go, or maybe a lap and a half to go. We're like, oh, we'll make a move right now. We'll pass some people go high with us, and nobody went high. So we ended up falling from 3rd and 4th back to 13th or 14th or whatever. We fell way back, and it was just the gamble you kind of take. And I'm not sure. I think people are going to take gambles, but I think if you're within a top 5 and you're in a chase position and you need to get the points, I'm not sure you're going to see somebody take a risk like Neil and I did and then end up losing 10 spots. I think you might see them play it safe until maybe the tri-oval, so they don't lose, an entire straightaway of speed, maybe just, maybe a late, like last lap kind of pass. But I don't know if you're going to see people, if top five is all chase drivers and they're all trying to, get good points. I don't know if you're going to see them make crazy moves. So I know for one that if I'm going to examine it more, if I'm in that position and it's like, and I have somebody like Neil saying that we should move out now, I'm going to be more cautious and more hesitant. I mean, it's wait a little bit longer. So even if we do get hung out to dry, we're not that far hung out to dry, and I don't lose all the points I could have gotten from that. So it's going to be a lot of strategy, a lot of mind games going on, I think, in that race.
Yeah, I can certainly agree with that. I think everybody wants to be aggressive to try to finish up front, but like you mentioned, you can literally lose or gain 10 spots within a straightaway, or coming off a 4 to go to the line, since the start finish line's on the other side of the tri-oval. So it's going to be a challenge no matter what, and I think it really is going to be a survival crapshoot, to kind of put two keywords together. So once we get past that, the last race of this contender round is going to be Kansas, which should be late. No, I'm sorry, it is afternoon. I believe that's correct. I know we talked about that earlier today, but I believe it's afternoon. We'll go with that for now. Afternoon, late afternoon, something like that. But basically, this is how we did earlier this year. Todd Thomas, which is a chase contender at this point, was able to come away with the win and propel him to the chase, and I'm sure he's hoping to repeat in that sense when we get to this track once again. Hudson, you had a really good run here. I believe you are a past winner here as well, as far as the Truck Series is concerned. Do you have a general liking for this track? What are your thoughts on it, and are you hoping this is a track that kind of solidifies your chase position for this round?
Yeah, I love this track. I've loved it ever since they come out with it. Like you said, in the trucks, I think it is, other than Homestead, I think it's my favorite track, truck-wise, to run. I'm not as good in the Cup car, but I'll say I finished 7th last time we were here. So if I can keep within points distance of making the cut, I have a lot of confidence going into Kansas. I love Kansas being where it's at in this in the chase, just because of how much I like running here. Honestly, as long as if I have any points to the green to the good, I'm comfortable going into Kansas as long as nothing crazy happens.
Yeah, we look. Well, no, we're not looking because I'm on another different channel. We look at the results here, going back to the slideshow. Nick, you finished 27th here. I'm going to be perfectly honest, it's not one of my favorite tracks. I tend to have issues here from time to time. How are you feeling looking at Kansas? Obviously, as we mentioned, Talladega will be pretty much up for grabs. Is Kansas usually a positive track for you? And do you think this is one of these races where you'll be on the cut line? Do you think you'll be have a cushion? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to be totally honest. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know how I finished. I don't know if it was a record, if I just sucked at that race. It's very possible. It could be both. But I think Kansas is one of those tracks I'll have to definitely practice a bit at that week beforehand, or maybe even starting now, because it's the final race, and it's not a track that I'm familiar with like Dover was. Like I said, as soon as I buy a game, or as soon as I have it itching to play iRacing, it's a single player testing, I go to Dover. So I'm gonna need to. So I knew Dover already. So I think for Kansas, I'm gonna need to practice more for that and kind of get more familiar with that track and do some official races, because it's very entirely likely that I did just not run well that race and ended up finishing in the high 20s, and it's not going to cut it when you're literally like 12th in the chase. So you need to I'm gonna need to definitely practice some more there and see how it goes. Now then again, I could come in and it could be a great track for me, and I might practice there and do some races in official and be like, hey, this is actually a good track. So you never know. It's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be a good last race.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. I think, it's going to be interesting 3 races for sure. As this first round proved, in a lot of ways, if you take, myself or I know Duel and Todd were around the cut line coming into Dover, or at least close enough to it, or things kind of flip-flopped a little bit. It's still anybody. This is why you race the races. It's anybody's game to get in there and advance. It's just survive and advance these first couple rounds. So I think everybody will be looking to do that. And obviously, since Adam created the slideshow, we can't leave the slideshow without having a spreadsheet of some sort with some math on it. So what we have here, and one of the last ones, is basically the average finish of everyone who, from the 3 races earlier, kind of averaged out. By looking at this, Todd Thomas should just, kick back, relax, and he'll cruise his way to the next round. And as you can see, Guillermo, and to some extent Eric as well, had pretty successful runs in these 3 races. I think it's very interesting to see from maybe Lance on back. Obviously, I don't think Caleb will have the same issues as he did in these 3 races early in the year. But really from Lance on back, you really had, 1 decent race and then 2 not so great races for a lot of these guys. Like I said, save for maybe Todd and Guillermo. So it really shows, it really, like I mentioned before, it's anybody's race to move on, and nobody's really out of it. Nobody's like, oh, I can write that person off. I know for me personally, I'm sure Nick and James would agree with me. You're not writing anybody off at this point. As you look there, the guys who are at the quote unquote bottom 4, according to the stats, are not bottom 4 guys. I don't think any of us would really say that. So, going into these 3 races, it'll be, like I said, it'll be a challenge, but hopefully we'll see how things turn out. And at least for us 3, we're hoping to be a part of that final 8, which will be after this race. And once again, I want to mention before we move on to the Truck Series stuff, which is interesting in its own right, the Extra Life Lance Channels will be sponsoring. I believe that stuff comes up sometimes towards the end of October or the 1st of November. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head, but be on the lookout for that stuff. We're going to post a couple things on Facebook, as well as, like I said, have Lance on the show to kind of go over how that works, how you can donate and be involved with it. And once again, we appreciate him for sponsoring what should be these 3 races here for the contender round. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the Truck Series, which just finished up at Milwaukee. Obviously, our chase stuff won't be that in-depth because I just didn't have the time to do all this between racing and starting the show. So what we're going to do is I'll switch over here and show the standings for the Truck Series. Obviously, not to, like I said, self-promote or anything, but I was able to have a win at I forgot the race already. The first race of this round, whichever race that was, I was able to grab a win, and so that kind of locked myself in for this round. Moving on, and just as we look at the points, Hudson, Jennels, Trago, Cody Smith, and Randy Fayash were able to move themselves on to the next round, which will be another 3 races, and then we'll cut 2 more guys off of that. Like I mentioned, much shorter field tonight for the Truck Series at Milwaukee, but that does not mean it was any less interesting, at least for the front couple guys. So, Hudson, why don't you tell us about your race and kind of how that went for you, and what are your thoughts on this past round we just finished up?
That was a very, very difficult track. It was just like New Hampshire, just a wider, I guess, New Hampshire, a little more rundown New Hampshire. So not really my favorite track. I hung, I think, top 4 the whole race. I know at the end, Dunn was giving me a run for my money. You and Caleb just pulled away at the end. I couldn't do nothing with you. flat tracks are not my forte. What is the schedule? What are we looking like? These next three, I love the trucks in general, but these next three races, the last four races, I love all four of them, and the trucks especially. So getting past this round was the main goal, and especially losing Brandon and Matt, that makes the next round a whole lot easier. Makes me look forward to Homestead a lot more. I know you'll be there, and I know, no offense to anybody else, but I think you're going to be the biggest level of competition when we get to Homestead. So now that we got Brandon Six and Matt Wright out the way, as bad as that sounds, kind of just cruise through the next round and get to Homestead.
Yeah, I think that's the big revelation, if you will, from tonight. And I'll kind of talk over the results. I'll pull them up here. Luckily enough, Caleb and I had a great battle for the last, I believe we had a caution with about, I want to say 20, 30 to go. And we had, like I said, we had a great battle at the end there. I obviously enjoyed the race a lot more than Hudson apparently did. I like Milwaukee. I enjoy racing there. I think it's unique to a lot of the places we go. And we've raced there in the past when we first started with the truck series, and have always had decent racing. As I mentioned before, I wish we had a little bit bigger field to kind of make the chase implications a little bit more consequential, if you will. But even though the finish of 11th that Brandon shows here, he definitely did much better than that. He was in the top 5 for most of the race, led laps at the beginning, led the opening 37 laps, and I thought was in a position to contend for the win. Obviously, some things happened, I think, late that kind of kept him from doing that. But you made a great point. Brandon made me aware that Matt Wright, who's hands down probably the favorite to win the championship, is in the middle of a move and some different stuff that kind of prevented him from getting out to the races. So he wasn't able to make it. That took him out of the equation. And then, like I said, Brandon, based off the finishes he had earlier in the season, or in the round, I should say, basically needed to win tonight in order to move on based on the amount of trucks we had in the field. And just based, where Randy was with his positioning, who would have been the next driver up. Like I said, early indications kind of thought he might have a chance at it, but just kind of fell off at the end. Really probably had a top 5 truck, and just, I think, ran into some issues there at the end. But with that being said, you mentioned the next 3 races we're going into, Hudson, starting at Martinsville. Then we're going to hit Texas and then Phoenix. Those next 3 races are definitely going to be some action-packed races, especially Martinsville. I think you and I both like Martinsville pretty well, and are hoping as we kind of go back and look at the chase grid here, which will be the top 6. So you're talking, with Lance Gentles, Greg Trago, Cody Smith, and Randy Fayash, definitely some contenders within that to make the Final 4. And like I said, hopefully with the decent fields we'll end up having again, it'll make for some interesting racing. And like I said, you'll never know. That's why we run the races. So just real quick, Hudson, who do you think will be in that Final 4 once we finish Phoenix and look forward to Homestead?
Yeah, I was just kind of going through that in my head. I think me and you would definitely be there. And man, all the rest of them are so close together. I think it's going to be Lance, and I think Cody makes it in. I know he's had a lot of bad luck this year, but it seems like right here at the end when it's starting to really matter, he's been showing up and getting it done. So I think that's going to be your 4. Me, you, Lance, and Cody.
I think I tend to agree with that. I think Cody will have a little bit of redemption from missing the cut Monday night, and will move on to what'll end up being the final round at Homestead. And then I think it'll be a great battle between the other three to see who that last spot is. I'm kind of torn between Lance and Greg for that last spot. I think consistency will come into play to see who takes that last spot, and then once you get to the last rates, it's basically, you know, anything can happen. We've definitely seen that in the Cup Series with this format the past couple of years. I know I learned my lesson on not to give up on races at Homestead when you're in the Final Four, and then because it'll cost you. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting 3 races coming up. I look forward to them. Hopefully, we'll have some bigger crowds show up for those races, be a part of the racing here in the Truck Series, and finish on a strong note. So that basically goes over the racing from Monday and Tuesday night. We've kind of looked ahead a little bit, as we'll be at Martinsville for the Truck Series, which we mentioned next Tuesday night. Should be a great race there. Love to get a little short track action in there. And then Monday night will be at Charlotte Motor Speedway. It should be tight racing, if I remember correctly from earlier this season. Definitely, the Charlotte race might have more short track looking cars by the end of it than maybe Martinsville will. Hopefully not, but you never know with that type of stuff. So we'll kind of wrap it up here. I want to thank James Hudson and Nick Terbuck for joining us tonight and helping me out with the show. Hopefully next week, Todd will be back with us to kind of go over things and run the ship for the show. I know he's probably out and about enjoying soccer and free beer right now, so I don't necessarily blame him. But hopefully he'll be back with us. And like I said, hopefully we'll have Lance on next week to kind of talk about the Extra Life charity event that he has coming up. And like I said, another great week in the Integrity Racing League. Once again, thank you for watching, and we hope to catch you on the track soon. Thanks, guys.